Good morning. It is 8:34 a.m. on Wednesday, July 4th, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. So, happy Independence Day if you live here in the United States. And I suppose still technically if you live somewhere else, it can still be American Independence Day, although I suspect that you're less interested in it if you live somewhere else. That's fine. It's interesting just thinking about the 4th of July as, the, I mean, that's, one of the patriotic holidays, right? Like that's America's birthday. And, my feelings about that have gotten more complex over the years. When I was a kid, it was just like, don't we live in a great country? And isn't it fantastic to celebrate the birthday and all of that? Um, and obviously, that's more nuanced these days. And to some extent, was always more nuanced than I knew as a kid, right? I mean, I think that that's one of the things that happens as you grow up and as you're willing to learn a little bit of history is, as much as there's a lot of complaining justified with what's happening in the United States today. It's also true that there's a lot of messed up stuff in the United States' history. And, USA is not alone in that. But at the same time, it's just one of those things where lots of times the history that you're taught as a child doesn't include the nastier bits. Or, even if it does include things like slavery or the mistreatment of Native Americans, those are all presented as things that was a long time ago, and we know better now. That sort of thing. But recognizing the complexity in that and the way these things persist and transform over time. So I'm not going to say I don't like the United States. That would not be true. But it is true that, like, when I was a kid and I was taught and felt the United States is the best country in the world, I think it's worth talking about what about it made it so good, was the idea, right? Like, and I know that the things that I thought made it good were things like it was a new country where people from all over could come and all be part of one new country, a country where they're free to do more of the things that they want to do. They don't have to do, they're not forced into things they don't want to do by other, just older traditions, and that it's this, the big melting pot, which has some connotations of its own. But the point being, one of the things that I thought of as great about the United States was the fact that we had people come from all over. And I thought that was one of the things that made it great. And then the idea of the American dream, this idea that if you come and you work hard, that you can advance. You can get the things that you want. And to some extent, like, there's some complexity there too. But I guess the reason that I wanted to just highlight, like, what are the things that are great about it? Like, the other things that seemed great as a kid were things like, and we fight the bad guys of the world, like in World War II, for example. And then, when I was in elementary school, it was Cold War too, right? It's in elementary school in the 80s, and so it's like, so all of those things are complicated now. To an extent, were complicated then, for sure. And it's not that, like, I want to, like, I wouldn't want to go back to being naive about those things. But I think what is worth discussing is recognizing that there's a complex history where America has done a lot of bad stuff. And, like, sure, slavery ended with the Civil War officially, but that, did that really make everybody equal? That's complicated. That's harder to implement. But I think when I want to celebrate America's birthday and when I want to feel good about my country, um, that when we talk about like what we want our country to be and how do we make it more like its ideal self, I feel like a lot of this stuff being done in the government right now is actively moving it in the opposite direction, and that's dismaying. So to celebrate celebrate the Independence Day of the United States, United States of America, I'm kind of just thinking today about more of how I can contribute to the United States becoming more like the ideal country that I imagined it to be when I was a kid. And, figuring out what I can do to help. In the meantime, I will talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.